Good morning. Happy Sunday. This is Nikki Phoenix coming to you from True to Self YouTube, and just going to share with you what's on my mind today. I think the thing that I'm always struggled with is how do you bring very large visionary concepts regarding the current world and that we're living in down to earth and explain it in a way that people really relate to. I started describing this morning to my partner what I wanted to talk about or some of the ideas, and although it seems clear in my own mind, when I start putting it into words, I realize it's a whole lot more challenging than I had thought. So, here goes. Because I personally am experiencing starting YouTubes, going on social media, and just the growth that I am embracing for my own life purposes right now, I am really connecting with the transformative nature of this process. It's kind of blowing my mind, actually. Just one insight here and description. When we put ourselves onto a public platform, we move from our private persona to a public persona. That in itself, if you do it or take it on, even perhaps if it's a business on a website, whatever, but from a personal perspective, you will experience having to break certain personal boundaries and barriers. That is the nature of this beast. And that is what I've been experiencing. How we don't like the sound of our own voice, don't like to see ourselves on camera. Some people call themselves shy or too private, or it's a public speaking thing, but it's on steroids. All these things come front of face where we have to deal with these things and come to terms with it. And I am seeing almost a social reinvention of the old school values that we used to have, where in terms of this private persona and public persona, number one, there is a schism, but a healthy one, in terms of our identity. We understand ourselves as dual again. We have our private persona that is private, and the public presentation of ourselves, which does not mean that we are not authentic. It just means we get to control that. We get to choose what part of ourselves we want to share with the world in that public space. And then we can go behind the scenes and punch a hole in the wall if we're pissed off, or whatever the case may be. But the world doesn't see that. They don't see the drama and the emotional processing. We are entitled to our own personal emotional processing, that is, that our loved ones would be privy to behind the scenes, and those that we're intimate with. But that's not something we're obliged to show to the world. And that's why it's often humiliating when people, when your loved ones perhaps expose you or what have you. The whole culture of narcissism highlights that issue. But that's this amazing realization that we are actually two social people in one, and how we can manage that. I relate this to the old school values in the sense that over the last 100 years, we've thrown out our social structure. It's just been eroded and it's fallen away. Give you an example. In the olden days, if you walked into a shop or in public, they would always address you by your surname, Mr., Mrs., Miss. It was always that way. In the contemporary modern world, in the last few decades, that stuff has fallen away between the generation of my parents and grandparents and my generation over the last 50 years. That's no longer. In the olden days, nobody knew your first name in public unless you had a personal friendship with them, and then you gave them the liberty and the permission to use your personal name. Otherwise, it was formal and respectful. And there's something very socially effective, functional about that practice. And it seems to me that in many ways we almost need to bring that back. But this is what's happening on another level in terms of understanding ourselves as having that more formal, or even business, if you want to call it, persona, that we share with the world in the public space, and our private persona, which is our personal and intimate space that's nobody's business except our own. And it draws into question the nature also of family relationships, friendships, intimate relationships, because those types of personal boundaries are then required to be respected, so that we can not embarrass or shame people and the people we love the most, because the public don't know you. They don't know you as your friends and loved ones know you, and they're not entitled to that information, because they will assess you and judge you in an incorrect manner. They don't know you. So this whole idea, this contrast between the old world addressing people formally and respectfully by their surname, and then privately they may know your first name. So that gives you a measure of where the old world social structure used to be, and where I think we are needing to reinvent those social structures, and how it's happening organically, because we've been called up to be visible in the public arena on the internet. And that's the difference again. And I just love that realization. I've contemplated a hell of a lot. So that's just my initial first thought. Then, talking about the big picture and what is going on, because all my insights at the moment through this growth period are all relating to this big picture. I went to church this morning, hence my cross. And of course, these same sort of insights come to me in a very simplistic manner. So I just want to demonstrate to you exactly what I'm talking about. And I've taken a book, a page out of someone else's book, and I want to show you this about the information age. There we go. Let's see if we can get that better framed. Because I see, and there may be more topics that come under this information age. These are just the ones that have come up for me at the moment. The impact of the digital and AI revolution, what is that? We can unpack it. The spiritual revolution, what is that? And we can unpack it. And the religious revolution, which is different to the spiritual revolution, but they are obviously interlinked and they all affect one another. These are observations that I've made of what is going on in the world. And then, of course, the social revolution, which I've already just touched on this morning. But let's just talk about, for a moment, this Religious revolution, I can have a word on that. Why do I feel like there is a religious revolution? Well, first of all, we need one, don't we? Fundamentally, am I a Christian? Yes. Do I go to church? Yes. Do I agree with the same doctrine that everybody is espousing to or supposedly believing in church? No, I don't. But that doesn't matter. And it's so amazing to be back connecting with Jesus, I must say. And the fact that the way other people understand Jesus is kind of different to the way I understand Jesus, I really don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't come out, obviously, in this church. We had the most beautiful sermon this morning. And there was the wife of the main pastor gave the sermon, and wow, it really moved me. It really moved me because she was giving what I would call a contemporary slant to the interpretation of the scriptures in John. And she was really excavating the most beautiful symbolic meaning out of those scriptures. Now, that's my language, because the physical interpretation, biblical interpretations, they don't work. But obviously there's a whole understanding that needs to be unpacked there. So I call myself a contemporary Christian, and just for the purposes of this presentation, let me just say that I understand that the church and our doctrine and understanding about Christ is going through a revolution. It definitely is. That's why you have people like Aaron Apka, and you have these massive debates between highly educated individuals in the church who are well studied, and many people will stand back and say someone like Aaron Apka, who is actually ushering in a new and freer version of the foundational doctrine, which includes us as humans in the identity of Christ. They will say that Aaron is not good, and all the horrid things that people can say. But actually, Aaron is ushering in part of that movement, which is also part of my consciousness movement in Christianity, is really getting back to basics about the identity of Christ. So there is, and what that means to us as humans, how the identity of Christ gives us an identity, because we are divinity in Christ. Not only when you've given your life to Jesus does Jesus live in you. He lives in you anyway, because Christ is love. He's divine love. And he lives in all of us. So God is not just for Christians. That's the difference. And this is where we're breaking down the prejudices of the old church doctrine, which Christians have been so despised for, and it's true. There's big challenges there, and a huge amount of people have had huge issues, have had very bad experiences in the church. And that's my purpose inside the church. For 30 years, I thought that I would be working outside the church. But it's interesting that I even defined myself according to the church. Well, of course, I was born into Christianity, socially, culturally. But now I really find meaning and purpose, and I love the church. The social aspect is so deeply needed on a spiritual level. And I'm still finding my language and my purpose to communicate these challenges to the church from within and from without. That's why I'm talking about this YouTube. But the church has to catch a big frickin' wake up. So that is the religious revolution that is occurring. Then there's the social revolution that I've talked about and touched on. There's the spiritual revolution, which is really too big to mention, but we need to become spiritually liberated and spiritually educated. This is the foundation of my work, There's no question. If you have any specific questions of how you would like to address that massive subject matter, please feel free to put questions to me. And then we're talking about the real and powerful catalyst, which I put at point number 1, the digital and AI revolution. Because we think that these things are unrelated. They are not. That's why I wanted to write them down. They are parallel dynamics. They're all being catalysts on one another. And the most powerful of them all in this information age, which is just exploding our minds in terms of our potential and raising the bar, is the digital and AI revolution. And it just really occurred to me, artificial intelligence is raising the bar. It's going to give us a serious run for our money as humans. There's 2 aspects that people are speaking about AI a lot of, and they're not speaking about the other thing. Number 1, the fear, which is very real, and the concerns of how powerful it is. And number 2, what is number 2? So it's the fear of how powerful it is, and also just educating yourself and using it in your work. In the small picture, the mechanism of it in terms of business. Yes, people say, oh, look, we can make movies now, and we can do this, and you can ask AI that, and all the rest. So everybody's starting to experience those details of how it is supportive in your life. But nobody's having the conversation about what is this really doing to us and calling out of us in the big picture. What is AI and the digital revolution doing to us as humans, and what is the impact in the big picture, in the long term? Firstly, let me just say, because I can only do this by insight and detailed snippets of what I'm seeing, because we're all seeing it. So I challenge you to answer that question. I can just say, for example, it occurred to me, we all used to go to gym, for example, first, let me just say, the last few decades of Western world culture has brought about obesity, slovenliness, overindulgence, entitledness. It's just there's been no war to create tension and minimalism. We've basically been almost overindulged as a generation. We had everything material. It's like the age of materialism has been overblown. AI is coming in now, and now there's no excuse for you to be obese. All the information is there in terms of nutrition, in terms of easy, cheap access to online physical training. I've done this for some time now, but in an erratic way, and this new interaction with AI is making me dig deep and commit to a very serious daily routine in terms of my physical exercise. I'm going to be nearly 60. I'm going to be turning 60 this year, and our AI and the digital online platforms, for a tiny amount of money and for some just commitment from myself and effort from myself, I can have a 20-year-old's body. I mean, seriously? I think that socially we're almost going to shame ourselves if we don't embrace this technology. Everybody's going to be saying, but it's so easy. Why are you not doing it? Why are you so out of shape? Why are you sick? Why are you overweight? So in this sense, AI is raising the bar. They're giving us a run for their money. AI is superhuman intelligence. And since we're seeing now that this new bar of excellence and information about life is so accessible and it's right there in front of us, How can we not embrace it and use it to make our lives so incredible? So in that sense, I see it raising the baseline quality of human life and lifestyle. It's just raising it exponentially. And that is an exciting part of what is happening here. So these are discussions I want to be having to say, what are the social, spiritual, religious impacts that the information age are having on us in the digital and AI revolution. It's just amazing. And I'm going to be documenting all these insights and inspiring people, sharing with them the impact it's having on me, and inspiring people to say, listen, guys, you actually don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You better dig deep, you better dive in, and you better get going, because we're all going there. There's you can't not anymore. If you don't exist on a digital platform, you basically don't exist in the world. And it's social acceptance is catching up with us, and social norms, that it's just not going to be socially acceptable anymore to not do these things. And I love that, because it means we all need to be challenged, we all need to get over ourselves, and we all need to get out there and connect and make our contribution to the world in this whole new counter-materialism value system that is growing out of this information age. It is counter-materialism. It's not how much can I get, it's how much can I give. And the only way that I can really survive in this new ecosystem and value system in the world is by sharing of my true self. And then that opens up the whole spiritual revolution and what that really means. That is a discussion for another day. Love you. Thank you for listening to me. And we will unpack more. There's just so many insights. I might just send you another message later today. I'm actually thinking about doing 2 dual messaging on a day. I can unpack something more deeply and longer form in the morning, and then I'll meet up with you for tea and give you a more concise, punchy version of something that I've processed, because this is just my mental processing going on that I'm sharing with you. This is not, I mean, yes, I might have a few thoughts and stuff beforehand, but I'm actually just channeling information right out there. So I'm part of this processing as well. So thank you, love you, bye. Happy Sunday.